Radar is a valuable tool for weather forecasters, enabling them to locate storms, measure their intensities, and determine the speed and direction of their movements. But in many instances, the most violent of storms, the tornado, fails to show up distinctly on conventional weather radar. Unless precipitation associated with a tornado is swept by the storm's winds into some identifiable shape, such as a fishhook echo on a radar screen, the dangerous funnel of high-speed winds will not of itself bounce a signal back to the radar station. Consequently, most tornado warnings result from actual sightings, someone spotting the storm as it drops from the parent cloud, and this leaves very little time for warning those in the path of the twister. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA for short, has been working on this problem for quite some time. For more than 10 years, NOAA's Severe Storms Laboratory in Norman, Oklahoma has been experimenting with Doppler radar. And though it hasn't been perfected yet as a tool for weathermen, it's already in widespread use by police departments. Director of the National Severe Storms Forecast Center, Alan Pearson.
Well, the Doppler radar that we use is a very much more sophisticated than what the Doppler radar that the police use to give us speeding tickets, but it works the same way. The signal goes out from the radar, hits the raindrop. If the raindrop is coming toward you, the frequency of the signal is changed enough so that we can measure that change. And so it will tell us that in the cloud, the wind here is blowing 30 miles an hour toward us, and just a little distance away, it's blowing 30 miles away from us. And so that tells us there's a rotation in the cloud. And our studies down in Oklahoma shows that rotation may start at about 20,000 feet and gradually work down to the surface. So if things go right, we might be able to detect the tornado as much as 30 minutes before it comes down to the ground.
For all its promise, Doppler weather radar does have its drawbacks. Its effective range is about 100 miles, little more than half the effective range of conventional weather radar. And it's very expensive, which means when the testing is complete and units go into operation around the country, as is likely, Doppler radar will at first probably protect only the nation's largest population centers.
This pudding rug is sold a whole lot of... My wife was packing in the Auditorium Hotel in downtown Cleveland after the tournament was over. I was sitting at the hotel dresser with my little book and sheet of hotel stationery, doing a little scribbling. She said, "Honey, what's so funny?" I said, "I've got orders here for about $3,000 worth of putters, and I'm not even in the putter business."
But you soon got into putter.
So, to make a long story short, I came back to Selma and bought a few tools and made arrangements for the necessary component parts, had castings made and so forth, and started making putters and started filling some of these orders. Jimmy DeMeritt, Kerry Middlecoff, Ed Oliver, quite a few of the big-name golfers started using my putters, and I made some other models, and they used those. Jimmy DeMeritt was leading money winner in 47 and 48 with his Odie. We got orders from everywhere. Send me a dozen Odies. That's what he called his putter. He called it his Odie. He'd knock in a putt, and he'd throw up his hand, and he'd say, "Odie's hot today." What's he talking about? That's what he called his putter. That's the guy that made it. So we put on our putters for a long time, a little decal that said, "If it's an Odie, it has to be good." It begins with a rough aluminum or bronze casting, and of course we work that down by drilling it, reaming it, and in case of aluminum, putting the proper amount of lead in it and so forth to make it the right weight. Then we grind it down and get the proper shape. Then we put a shaft in it and work the shaft down till we get the feel that we want. Then we grip it. Then last, we polish it, and if it comes out like we want it to, we stamp Odie Christmas on it. But we don't put Odie Christmas on any of them unless they're real good, because I'm kind of proud of my name. We want everything that goes out of here that has Odie Christmas on it to be tops. Got a little poem that I love very much. It explains it. If you put a little loving into all the work you do, and a little bit of gladness and a little bit of you, and a little bit of sweetness and a little bit of song, not a day will seem too toilsome, not a day will seem too long. And your work will be attractive, and the world will stop and look, and the world will see a sweetness like the tinkling of a brook in the finished job, and they'll turn to look at you with a world's appreciation of the thing you found to do. Just a little bit of loving and a little bit of song and some pride to make it kind of straight and true and clean and strong. And the work that you're doing pretty near before you know will start the world a-talking. And the little winds that blow will bring echoes of it to you, and you'll find that you've done more than you had dreamed or hoped for when the task was first begun. And you'll find the little loving you have put into the same has come back to you in loving and come back to you in fame.
The murder uncovered what is unknown to the average Montgomeryan or South Alabamian: male prostitution, young men who sell sexual favors to homosexuals. Our investigation shows the price of such an encounter ranges from $10 to $25 for 10 to 15 minutes. This 4-block area in downtown Montgomery is known by law enforcement officials as the prime pickup spot for male prostitutes who range in age from 12 to 30 years old. Further east, this is the other pickup spot for young male prostitutes. Dr. David Nettles is said to have made his pickup here on the last night of his life. This man is a male prostitute. He is known by local police here in Montgomery to work the areas where homosexuals look for sex for pay. We talk with him about his business.
Tell me about hustling in downtown Montgomery as far as you're concerned.
Well, you can make, $10, $15, for about 20 minutes, just for 20 minutes, You can make $10, $15, and a lot of times more, It's just according.
Doing what?
Having sex
With who?
fags that ride around.
Where do they ride around?
They ride around downtown,
Where downtown?
around the Dutch House, Amvet's, Jimmy's Newsstand,
What streets?
Montgomery Street, Lee Street, Catoma Street, Moulton Street.
Okay, what do you call yourself now? I mean, what are you employed as?
Well, just a hustler, out hustling,
Is that what you call it? You don't call it prostitution?
No,
Why not?
because it's not prostituting. But see, when you're down here, see, you don't sell your body. In other words, that other man selling his, see. And that's what it is.
Are you the only one who hustle,
No.
as you call it?
It's
How do you know?
Well, I've seen them downtown. I know 2 or 3,
How old are you?
21.
How old are these other people you say you see downtown hustling?
Well, from 12 to 22 years old.
I beg your pardon, 12 to 22 years old?
Yes, sir.
How do you know they're 12 to 22 years old?
A lot of them are young kids, and they just, like I was when I was about 12, 13 years old, that's when I first found out about hustling,
How did you find out about it?
Well, I come downtown, and dude told me to just stand around and, you make some money. And I said, how's that? He says, if a car pulls over, if, the people keep sitting in the car, just walk over and strike up a conversation with him. So, I did, and I've been hustling ever since then.
And how old were you then?
I was about 12 or 13.
How often do you hustle?
every night.
What time do you start?
About 8 or 8:30. I used to get down here about 9 o'clock, and everybody starts riding about 9 o'clock.
When you say everybody, what do you mean?
Well, faggots, you know.
You say that these people will park their car, and do you approach them or do they approach you? How do you do it? How do you make the contact?
Well, see, you always walk up, ask them if, get you a cigarette out where you can see it, you know, where you won't see you reaching in your pocket or nothing, you know. And just walk up and ask him if he's got a light, you know, or something, and then you start talking to him, you know. And he's going to ask you, you know, how you doing? Say, just messing around, you know. And then he's going to say, what do you mean messing around? And you tell him hustling. And then he asks you how much you charge. Then you get in the car and y'all go wherever, you know, wherever he lives at.
And then what happens?
And, well, then you have sex with him, you know. And then he'll pay you, you know, and everything, carry you back to where you want to go.
You plan to continue doing this?
I don't know.
Dr. Paul Hubbard, the Executive Secretary of the Alabama Education Association, was the center of attraction as the committee began exploring the article dealing with taxation and debt limitation. The message Hubbard brought was not a new one. He expressed concern that the proposed Constitution would abandon constitutional earmarking of state funds for education. More specifically, Hubbard spoke of the state's income tax, which is, among other things, earmarked for education.
Our people feel very strongly about these taxes because they do give some security, constitutionally speaking, to the Educational Trust Fund. I think Mr. Harrison put the question right before you. Will my vote to constitutionally leave that dedication off those funds, will it improve education? I think that's the bottom line question. You got to ask yourself, if I vote to do this, in casting my vote to leave the constitutional dedication off the income tax, off the ad valorem tax, will I in fact be improving education for my county and my constituency and the children that I'm trying to represent? And I think that's a question that ultimately you're going to have to ask yourself in here. And if you think it will improve it, then you've got to conscientiously vote your conviction. If on the other hand you think it will not improve it, I ask you, why all the change? Why do we need to change it if it won't improve it? I think the burden of proof to show you that it improves it has to come from the governor's office and from those who propose this Constitution to you. Mr. Chairman, I appreciate it.
Testimony before the Special Legislative Committee was originally limited to 30 minutes per person, but questions and other discussion extended the time Hubbard spent at the mic to almost 2 hours. Not all of that time was easy for Hubbard. Representative Jack Venable, for example, had a question he wanted Hubbard to answer.
When it passed that night and is certified to the Secretary of State, what effect would that have on the Special Educational Trust Fund? At that minute, at exactly that minute when the Constitution passed.
There would be no longer a constitutional guarantee on the income tax. And
no, sir, that's not the question. What would be the effect at that minute on the Special Educational Trust Fund?
That is the effect. There would be no earmarking of the constitutionality of the income tax and the ad valorem tax.
No, sir, you're not answering my question.
Other topics covered in the third day of public hearings included suffrage and elections. Dennis Latham, WSFA TV News at the Capitol.
Troy police say they've been working for about 6 months to come up with the indictments issued last week. And though they've made about 24 arrests, they say they still have more suspects. Police Chief John Lee said the arrests were made as the result of a routine and ongoing investigation. And one of the officers involved in the investigation says that all arrested attempted to sell a drug, most of which was marijuana.
The actual buy would take place. Then, a short time after the buy went down, the undercover officer would notify either me, Agent Gibson of the ABC Board, or Investigator Brown of the Troy Police Department here. And we would go meet the undercover agent. We would get stuff that he bought, and we would seal it up, label it, and the following day, or maybe the next day, we'd transport it to the toxicologist lab.
We do have drugs here, as this investigation pointed out. It's a continuing problem, and we're striving to do everything in our power to slow down the drug traffic into Troy, and if we could eliminate it, we'd certainly like to do it.
Police refuse to identify those already arrested until the remaining persons under indictment have been served warrants. But they did say most of those arrested were young people. Say about a third of them went to Troy State University. Glenda Webb, WSFA TV News in Troy.
In December 1978, the Bullock County Commissioners, Union Springs City Council, and Bullock County Hospital Board filed a civil suit against the county's tax assessor, accusing him of not doing his job. The suit alleged that this man, James Carter, failed his duties, and because of it, the tax collector was behind. Mrs. Aileen Blow, the county tax collector, also entered the suit, saying that records necessary for her to collect taxes were coming in late.
I haven't really been able to meet any of my deadlines.
Bullock County Probate Judge R.C. Huffman, the chairman of the county commission, says the inability to collect taxes has made it hard for the county to pay bills.
Has the county suffered anything in particular because of this?
Not specifically, because you must remember that the year is relatively young, the fiscal year, and according to our projections, if something is not done, we will suffer tremendously.
The mayor of Union Springs says that his city is also affected.
Well, we're not able to give the services that this revenue funded, and we felt that we had to do something to find out what the problem was.
Carter, on the other hand, says it's not his alleged incompetence that's the problem.
The main reason is because of the errors that the reappraiser made. And the second reason is because of lack of help.
Carter also blames the new tax reappraisal system for slowing down the process. The case is still in the hands of the court despite a partial agreement. Carter has been given help in the office, and the progress of the tax assessment is being regularly monitored by the courts. Some residents are hoping for improvement, but they are still worried about the next 6 years. In November, Carter was re-elected to office for another 6-year term. In Union Springs, Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News.
District Attorney Jimmy Evans called today's arrest a united front of all law enforcement officials. According to Evans, the other end of this connection involves prominent businessmen as well as small dealers, both in and out of state. The district attorney's office and the police department declined to quote a dollar figure of today's bust, but both agreed that $250,000 is a conservative amount. The investigation is expected to last for a couple of days, and more arrests will be forthcoming. Janet May, WSFA TV News.
The Public Service Commission has been accused of holding closed-door meetings on matters dealing with Alabama Power Company's request for higher rates. Commission President Mrs. Juanita McDaniel says, yes, the door was closed on one meeting, but only to flies and noise and not to the press.
Yes, we closed the door, and yes, we did meet in my office, but no decision has been made, and I do not know at what point now we'll be meeting with the staff again. But let me assure you that before the afternoon is over, that I'll be meeting again with my staff on these very matters.
The meetings are to review testimony in Alabama Power Company's request for $288 million in annual rates. Mrs. McDaniel says the final decision on just how much of a possible rate increase might be granted will have to be made by their regularly scheduled March 5th PSC meeting. This emergency increase request will be redeliberated in permanent increase hearings that are tentatively scheduled to begin in the next 2 weeks. Mrs. McDaniel says it's characteristic of any major utility rate request to review testimony, and she says between now and Monday there will be many more such meetings, and they also will be open meetings. The power company could receive anywhere from $0 to $288 million in annual rate increases. Many sources, however, indicate they'll at least receive the $210 million that they did not get when a Montgomery County Circuit Court struck down a PSC order of last November. The total amount, if it's granted, would at least mean a $10 per 1,000 kilowatt increase to the base rate of a customer. At the State Office Building, Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News.
I just talked to one boy from the state.
We'd like to get everyone up. And what does the future hold? Well, I think it is bright if we are willing to put our shoulder to the wheel and willing to do what is necessary. But I think we cannot, at any one time, take the attitude that, well, it looks like it's a lost cause, that inflation is eating up our money. We just maybe not doing any good to advertise.
When you leave here, please keep in your mind that you are a part of producing America. And you need not ever apologize for that. To the contrary, America needs to understand what the producing life of this country is all about.
Once again, the committee heard testimony concerned with the loss of constitutional earmarking of tax revenue for schools. Members of the State Board of Education expressed opposition to unearmarking of education funds. Tina Davis, president of the Alabama Education Association, testified before the committee. She spoke of earmarking as a sacred trust.
Ladies and gentlemen, the simple truth of the matter is schools are being asked to do more and more with less and less. And now the legislature is being asked to tell the teachers that they will no longer need a sacred trust in their hands by the people of this state in the area of educating our children. Unearmarking over $380 million, one-third of the money guaranteed to our children, placing that earmarking in a position to be eliminated by a majority vote of the legislature rather than a majority vote of the people, to me is breaking a sacred trust between the people of the state who've spoken to this desire to guarantee themselves and their children educational opportunities.
Generally, the proceedings appeared to move faster than the previous day when AEA Executive Secretary Dr. Paul Hubbard spent 2 hours at the microphone. Hubbard did speak briefly, but only to answer questions. Representatives of area education groups also spoke out against removing the constitutional guarantee of earmarking. Also speaking on the subject of taxation was former House Speaker W.M. Beck, Sr. He indicated that local governments should have the power of taxation.
The question of taxation has always been a source of discomfort, and they always told me that is the taxes are things that make the seat of government uncomfortable, isn't it? You've always sitting down here in this legislature. So what we have is this local tax business, see, where we've gone with constitutional amendments, you see. We should have the provision in this Constitution that local taxes may be levied by local governmental agencies without having an extra constitutional amendment.
Others were present who objected to unearmarking, but in the area of highway funds. Much the same argument was used in defending highways funds as was used by pro-education earmarking forces. Both feared regression in the advances made in the two areas. The committee still has testimony to hear on public officials, impeachment, initiative, and recall. Dennis Latham, WSFA TV News at the Capitol.
They suggested such things as to create a better image of Alabama, that a major effort must be made into advertising the state within the state itself, without the state, and overseas or abroad. That we need to pay a greater emphasis on international trade. We need to emphasize the natural resources we have. A major emphasis into the whole industry of tourism, because in tourism, if you think for a moment, it spreads the development across the whole state, and it spreads it from the summer employee that needs jobs, between school sessions, right on, through the whole spectrum of employment. Another recommendation was to enhance or build the secondary road system, because this ties into all kinds of development, and again, it ties into tourism.
That he is very bold, that he studies what he's doing, that he's totally dedicated, hardworking. He, like any new governor coming into a complex setting like we have in state government in Alabama, he is still rightfully trying to find his priorities, and he will. And I have a great deal of faith that he's going to serve us very well. I'm very pleased with what he's done so far.
What about and you mentioned boldness, bold actions as taking over the prisons. Is this a good idea?
Of course it is. It's a way to meet the court's mandate in a sensible way. Casting down gauntlets and cussing federal judges are useless replies now to court orders. I assume that Governor James went to the judge and said, "Judge, the state intends to abide by the court decision. Let's work out a way to do that. That demonstrates sensibility and good intentions," and they must have done that. That should have been done several years ago.
one thing that really stood out, Phil, was the fact that when we needed baskets right down there at the 3-minute mark, we tallied every time. Val hits 2 big baskets, Bubba gets a basket, Eric gets a basket, Bobby gets a basket, and they're all on set plays and all designed to go the way they did, and everybody did their job, and we got the ball in the hoop. I thought that made a big difference. I thought coming out at the half and establishing the upper hand as we did made a big difference. And I thought the delay game early in the first half to buy us a little time made a big difference. So in a lot of ways, I guess you can say we did put 2 pretty good halves together.
Okay, you got 2 teams that finished in the second division with a lot of momentum now. Georgia surged at the end and beat one of the best 2-3 teams in the tournament. They got a lot of confidence. Marbury played well. They look like they're going good.
Well, you know, Phil, despite what the scoreboard showed, I think we surged at the end also. Oh, yeah. We were playing very good basketball against good teams late in the season. So I thought we had a little momentum going in. The Tennessee game at home, for instance, was a very well-played game until we got in such foul trouble that it just eliminated everything. So I thought we were surging, but I think you would have to say that Georgia has got more momentum going because a great win over Mississippi State. That's one of the best teams in the league. There's no question about that. But and they go down to Georgia, down to Florida, and get a big victory after a loss to us, and then we lose to Tennessee. So momentum's definitely probably in their favor right now. But I think we're playing pretty well. And it's here's one of the situations that's amusing. It's neither one of us used our bench very much, and I think the fatigue factor is going to determine who wins tomorrow.